Good morning, good morning, good morning, all you lovely, lovely people. I forgot to connect my spine again this morning. But how's everybody doing today? I'm actually, I'm not that tired for once. It might be hard to believe, but I think I actually slept pretty well for once. I know. Isn't it so very, very rare? Can you believe it? You didn't sleep. Why didn't you sleep? Why didn't you sleep? Wait, Addie? Excuse me? What do you mean you didn't sleep? You're the one who told me that I need to sleep. You come to me and go, hey, Gene, go to sleep. And you didn't sleep? Really? God damn it. Really, Pancake? You starting me off like that this early in the morning. I cannot believe you. Oh, yeah? Who are you writing it for? Well, let's walk through this real quick. Good morning, Juno. Thank you for getting. No, good morning, Juno. Thank you for following 7 hours ago. That's not what thought I was reading. Good morning, Calypsy. Thank you for getting first. But then getting stolen by Addie. Good morning, Dwarf. Thank you for getting second. And good morning, Rengoku's wife. Thank you for getting third. Good morning, Blobby. How you doing? Sleep is very important, chat. Sleep is so important. No. The streamer copied me. That's insane. That is insane. Where the sick levels at today? I'm doing. I don't know, to be honest. I'm still feeling a bit out of it, but I think I finally actually got a decent amount of sleep for once. So hopefully, we'll be feeling better very soon. I'm watching a cool streamer. I'm glad you're watching a cool streamer. Remember though, chat, no matter what a streamer asks you to do, make sure to always take care of yourself first, alright? You are the most important thing. Ain't no streamer out there more important than your health. You understand me? You hear me? Now I'm gonna mix my little coffee drink real quick, and then we're gonna get started, alright? Man, I love my frother. My frother. That's what it's called. Is this your first morning stream, really, Volfa? Good morning. Oh, looks like Spell's the top leaderboard today. Wait, Blobbit Derp, I know you. Don't you do some perfume stuff? Well, good to see you. Good morning, Akira. Good morning, Volfa. Good morning, Addie. Good morning, Blobby and Ocean and Dwarf and Akira. What else we got here? Good morning, Pinky. Good morning, Calypsy, of course. I think all the mods are asleep this morning. Oh no, we have Pinky. Pinky's a mod. Hi, Pinky. I'm really curious about that, actually. I might have to come check you out sometime. See all the stuff that you're doing. Good morning, Josie. How you doing? So, today we're going to do what we usually do. We're going to be doing some lovely Minecraft. Some soft-spoken gaming. Because I am so obsessed with the game lately. I cannot stop playing it. Volva. Oh, that ain't too bad. I stream for 2 hours a day. It's alright. And on top of that, I try to do some long streams on the weekends. Your cat's walking over your keyboard. Oh, tell the cat I say hi, alright? Give a little snuggle. Give a little smooch. I do not know why I've been so obsessed with Minecraft lately, chat. It's just been like, I don't know, it hits an edge, you know? What's that itch? Who knows? You finally got Minecraft? Alright, you know what? I'm thinking about trying to open up a Minecraft world. Oh, when Goku's wife, you're totally fine, sweetie. Oh, what do you want me to call you again? Because you said that I can call you by something different, but if it's not written down, I tend to forget. But yes, this morning's gonna be nice and slow. Focusing on some relaxing, hardcore Minecraft. Good morning, Sanger. How you been? How's the doctor been? You lasted 10 minutes. See, it ain't easy, is it? It ain't easy. So how you been, Sanger? Mm-hmm. You make it seem easy. I most certainly do not make it seem easy. Minecraft. Vulva. Keep your head out of the gutter. It's too early for that. I just woke up. Mm-hmm. Alright. Let's make sure the game volume ain't too high. It should be good there. Alright, we're back at it. Man. We got our little place underground. Because remember, chat, we're going to try to beat the game completely underground. Which doesn't mean we'll miss out on some cool things, but... Got my little step farm here. We got carrots and melons and potatoes and all this little stuff. Got all the bamboo we need. Got all of these vines growing down that we can use for making it into bone dust. Oh, it's really cute saying. Well, I hope you have a lovely day. Oh, Anya, you're barely late. You ain't ever gotta apologize for being late, chat. I don't know how many times I gotta tell you that. I'm gonna be honest, chat. I'm late more often than you. It is so cozy down here. And because we're restricted to being down here, we make cozy little spaces. Mm-hmm. Anya. Well, feel free to go and cuddle with your partner. Hope you enjoy it. Gene sounds different for you today. In what way? Is it because I was stuck in the southern voice? Oh, my coffee's too hot. 1 second. You watched my Big Mac short. How'd you like it? Which Big Mac short? You mean the one where I crash out about somebody ordering a Big Mac? No, it was always fun. Oh, the fanfic one. Anyway, I want to build a little house. I feel like this is all too tight in. Well, do your best. Oh, we go. I think this is where we'll start. That goes that direction, so a nice little space. Akira, what's wrong? What are you complaining about? You're fine. Inspiration for drawings. I don't know. Are you gonna go back in the basement after stream? Or are you going to, stay outside of the basement? That's what it is gonna depend on. That's fine. Fine. You all can have 10 minutes outside of the basement. Oh, good morning, Night. How you doing? You're allowed 10 minutes outside of the basement, it's fine. Only 10 minutes, though. Just make sure you go back afterwards. You better not be planning to escape. I'll never give you time again. No, you're fine. Night Blossom, you're totally fine. Good morning, Karamia. It's totally fine, Karamia. I know that you said that these would be the days that you're not able to be here as much. I would love a pet rock, actually. They're kind of cute. Good. The basement is nice and cozy. Oh, I mean, what else are you gonna do in the basement except watch Gene? You can at least go into the upper house. Well, I'm glad you like being here. Or bring here. No, you won't be banished from the basement. Alright, I'll attach a lead to you, and then you can go get a few minutes outside to the supermarket. I don't know if I can trust you in public yet. Oh, he can come down to the basement. The more the merrier. You'll have to ask Vani about being in the walls, though. Those are Vani's walls. You want to fetch your own food? Maybe. We'll see. I don't know if I trust you yet. Can I eat human? Don't eat human. I need the humans. Humans are important to streaming. Humans are the only ones who can watch streams. I will always bring back little gifts when I go out, okay? If we're in the basement today, what would be on the menu? I'm thinking Indian food today. We can do a butter chicken for the meat eaters. And we can do a pumpkin curry for vegetarians and vegans. I think that'd be a pretty solid one. Yeah. I might want a Japanese curry. I'm good at cooking. I can make food out of anything, Jet. I can make food on a budget, trust me. You're not allowed to eat bleach, Jet. We have to keep you alive. I mean, you don't want to die on me yet. You can eat water. I will give you some ice chips you can chew on. Fine, you can have a little blood. We'll see if we can find you something. Mm. Mm-hmm. By the way, lovelies, we're slowly working on making, no, brain immediately shuts off. We're slowly working on making the mascots, and those are going very, very nice. They are adorable. I cannot wait to show them all to you. Good morning, adorable little bunny. How you doing? Mm-hmm. The mascot designs are going very nicely. I guess we're going to be stuck like this for a little while. Once they are, they have variations to them. Why do you always get so excited with Leo? I do not understand the excitement for this voice. But yes, so Leo's super cool. Leo's very nice sounding. This will hurt your heart. I'm sorry that it's going to hurt your heart. You will die without headbands. Well, we'll just have to assign you someone to do headbands. What was I thinking about, Chad? My brain has officially shut off again. Oh, right. So we're talking about, the thing. Mascots, yes, the mascots. Okay, so the mascots have different variations, and they are all going to be very, very adorable. And I will also be learning how to. How? How? How are you setting fire over there? Now explain this to me. You are underneath the dirt. You are all the way over there. Where are you? Okay. You stupid thing. I'm here. You live here now. Do not disappoint me. Oh, no, but see, that's the thing. These mascots have been made in a specific way to be easy to make your own sonas out of. Each one of them can have their own animal form, where they, yes, you can say it, girly, where you can, make your own animal version, because we are the menagerie. They are simple, but very cute, and very, very aesthetic for this thing. Und in lore, Jean, me, sews them and makes the little guys. I believe in you. Good luck. How do I spell a what word? Oh, that would be cute. Oh, thank you, Hattie. I'm glad you know how to spell it, but I most definitely do not know how to spell. Okay, ein Moment bitte. I need to look something up over down here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm not the best at spelling, Chad. But I think you already know those. Oh, is that a thing in Rupee? Yeah, spelling is not my strong suit. It's not even my weak suit. No, I smell like pear blossom. Pear blossom and peonies. Peonians? Oh, thank you for the stitch. There we go. Here they are. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, boop, boop. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My chance goal is one day to have my own custom scent because I just love colognes. Colognes and perfumes and all sorts of things. And I wear some perfumes, I wear some colognes. Smell has always been very important. Mm-hmm. What kind of scent would I make? See, I do not know exactly. I think I'd really have to. What if I made a collection? Oh, distinky. Because sometimes I like something that has a little bit of spice, you know? I also enjoy a woodsy scent, but I do love citrus very much. Citrus is one of my favorite personal smells. It makes you feel more awake and healthy in a way. Where's my little Zerdos? So I'd want some that are light, but then some that are more masculine. Oh, I've had a lot of different ones by John Malone. John Malone's currently my favorite. He's a lot of very non-traditional scents for men that I enjoy. Because the classics with the men is always, you have to have this like very strong, bold smelling things. And it's just, maybe sometimes I'd like a pretty smell or something. Of course, yes I do. It has a 18 plus age limit and it must be age verified. There is an ID verification. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Oh, that's grew on its own. So that's okay. Good morning, 3636. How are you doing today? And now I can drop this. Your perfume's so basic. Go and try some scents. There are some incredible ones out there. There you go. Well, you just do little dabs. There are certain points in the body you should put perfume to make it last longer and have more of an impact. And the goal is not to be always smelling strong of the scent, but to have it come across when you're close to others. Enjoy your leg. Perfumes are not for feeling fancy. Perfumes are just a little added touch to your day. And of course, if you want to wear them to be fancy, that's fine as well. when I do finally make a plush, and if I do get my own scent, we will be doing a sample of the scent with the plush, as well as with other items. Exactly. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. There we go. Take these beets. Put out a few beetroot seeds. There's a Bill the Bear. That's kind of cute. Adorable. I bet it's very lovely. And back to mining. No one was warning me how low my health was getting. I think you all are wanting to see if I die or not. What an evil, evil chant. Well, I hope you got a good taste. No devil horns. In what world am I devilish? Me devilish, never. I am awake. You know, I'm feeling genuinely very nice today. I wonder if I haven't been getting enough sleep as well. Maybe I need to add an extra hour of sleep every day. We'll see. Which mod likes to bully me the most? Vanya. Vanya. Good morning, everyone who has just come in. Or good evening. I hope you find yourself a nice little place to just cuddle up and lay down and relax. Oh, Morale. Good morning. No, Zane, you're fine, sweetie. Maybe after Minecraft. Vanya's sleeping right now. They are in a place where the typhoon is currently hitting, so there's a good chance that they won't be around today. So one problem with having people all around the world. There's always something crazy going on. Yeah. Or has recently become the favorite to bully. You have good cuddles. What's your confession, dwarf? What timing? Really, dwarf? No, come stay here, Vanya. We only sing positive things. Vanya lives in the walls. Vanya's an exception to a lot of things. Casey, I'm never mean. I sent you that. I sent you the poem yesterday, remember? How does that make me mean? No, dwarf, you're not allowed to leave. Enjoy your Lexies. Lurk just lets me know that you're not there. As in, like, I should not try to reach out and talk to you. Because every once in a while I'd try to have a conversation with a person, and it turns out that they have actually gone off. In addition, though, what Lurk really does is it tells the Twitch chat, or the Twitch thing that views when there's bots, not bots, but when it views that there's viewer, it kind of activates you to be registered. So that you'll count as a view. So it's good for my numbers. Or for Twitch knowing that you are actually there watching. Because every once in a while, Twitch decides to change how it sees its viewers, and if people don't chat, sometimes they just won't be counted. Dogs. My favorite animals are dogs. I love dogs. No, not because I'm a puppy. Just always gotten along with dogs. To be fair, I get along with every animal, but I've always been really close to dogs. Then come on, get up. Get on up. I wonder if we should dig down a little bit. Good morning, Demoness Chip. How have you been doing, sweetie? 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm just mining. Looking for resources mostly. Oh, I'm sorry you've been doing so bad, so poorly. I might eventually clear out this area though and use it for something. But right now it's just a mine. Oh, whoops. I probably lost your favorite cave. Depends on which one's your favorite. Harvest time. Oh, yeah, I most definitely lost that one. The weird redstone thing, yeah. Wow, Carmia, why are you so mean to me? So mean. But don't worry, we'll find more axolotls. Melon's taking so long. Oh, I'm sorry that your cat jumped on you. Fight the cat. Beat up the cat. Win. Talking fire hydrant. So rude. Well, I'm gonna find an axolotl and I'm gonna name it Venus Stinks. So I hope you enjoy having a axolotl named after how much you stink. Good morning, flower cow. Yeah. As you should. I don't think anybody's called me Pretty Puppy today. Why do more people not call me Pretty Puppy? Apparently I've been missing out. Yes, you do, Venus, you stink. I don't want to ask to be called anything. If I have to ask to be called Pretty Puppy, then I'm clearly not a pretty puppy, am I? No, I'm not a dog, but maybe I like being called Pretty Puppy. I don't know. Don't have to fight me, okay? Never done that in my life, chat. Never done that in my life. Never admitted to anything. Good morning, Snowy. Good morning. Ah, it's good coffee. It's a good day today. I hope it stays a good day. No. What is morning for you then? Need a little more bamboo. I feel really cozy right now. Oh, you know what I want? I need a blanket. Now you see, you underestimate me. I did the man thing. All of my socks are the exact same. I exclusively wear black socks, so that I'm never out of work socks. I like head drums. I don't have bleach, because I don't have any clothes wide enough to justify having bleach. I'm one step ahead of you, Venus. Okay, I might have like one or two pair of silly socks, but shh. Don't tell people about those. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of something. Why do you judge me for the things I've done? Okay, look. The first time I tried to make it in a pot. No. Hear me out. Don't you be spreading lies about me. The first time I did it, I had done it in a pot and I'd forgotten about it, okay? And so I came back. No, I know. Okay, look. I'd forgotten about the rice. And so suddenly I smelled that my entire apartment smelled like rice. I was trying to figure out what was going on. And I remembered, oh shit, I'd been cooking rice earlier. And yeah. No, you can make rice in a pot, that's fine. But rice cooker's better. But I just, I forgot about it. So don't blame me. Don't fight me, Jet, okay? But I have a rice cooker now, so I never burn it anymore. Hmm. Y'all just hate me, that's what it is. Well, some people don't eat that much rice. Enjoy your sleep, Anya. I did not burn it the other night. That was a lie. Lies and slander. I am slandered so often, chat. It's crazy how often I'm slandered. I did not burn rice. I have not burnt rice. That's fair. You cook your food over an open fire, Eddie? Really? Fun. A little sip on. I'm sorry if I missed chat for a little bit. I was trying to find a thing. I'd looked up, inspiration. I mean, I finished all of my food already, so I can't, I put it in a rice cooker. How am I gonna burn it? Stuffed kebab sounds yummy. Yes, I know what I'm gonna do. Oh, that's what we're doing this for. I prefer bread usually to pasta, but pasta's good for some meals. Oh, yeah. And what is my name due to my transgressions with rice? I need a new pick. Oh, I miss German bread too. I miss German bread so much. The man with the grain brain. I don't even know what that. Okay. Goofy. Hey, at least it's not as bad as Florentine bread. Oh man, Florentine bread was the worst. No, congratulations on acquiring cat. I'm proud of you for acquiring cat. Okay. I think it's time we started venturing. Where were you in Italy? There's a reason why Italy's known for its pasta, not its bread. Oh, yeah. Focaccia's good. But, like, yeah. Germans, I think, do bread the best. France is pretty good as well. Wolfa, have you had Florentine bread? Bread that goes stale 2 minutes after you've had it? Bread where they put no salt or any flavoring into the bread? Bread that is so plain and nothing that it reminds me of the personality of some people I've met. You cannot defend Florentine's bread. Others maybe. But the traditional Florentine bread is some of the worst bread I've ever had in my life. Florentine's bread uses no salt and very little anything else. It is very hollow, dry, and is good for one thing exclusively. That is dunking in oil with seasoning. And even that, there are other breads better suited for. No, no. That's not, no, 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 no. I've had that before, that's different. Trust me, if you go there and you just have the one that is the driest, worst bread you ever had, that's the traditional Florentine bread. Enough so that I talk to Italians who have it, and they're like, "Yeah, no, we don't eat that. We eat every other kind of Italian bread. We just don't eat that one." And that will has permanently ruined the bread for me. I know Italy will just have to step up its game. What am I doing? I keep like I keep moving around and forgetting what I'm in the middle of doing. I'm just gonna go eat the carrots. I'll eat the carrots, it's fine. Thank you for the follow, Pancake Elephant. I hope you enjoy your time here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good morning, Aiko. Okay, I remember what I'm doing. Okay, I need food. And so what I'm gonna do is we're gonna grab the crane here. We're gonna do this, that, perfect. Okay, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Boom. Now we're gonna make the bread. Thank you for the follow, Gothic Ghoul. Bread. Boop. Boom. Boop. And now we can explore. Oh, yes. I mean, it could historically be bad. It's still historically bad, though. I do appreciate the history behind it. But you know, you'd think that by now, with the taxes being as they are, they would have decided to, improve the bread over time. But good morning, Gothic. How are you doing? And good morning, Pancake. How are you doing? I like that name, actually, Gothic Ghoul. I used to follow a ghoul. And they're one of my favorite streamers to watch. Now, what are the chances I run into a cave eventually? What do you think, chat? Do you think I can cross the entire map before we hit a cave? Or do you think I'll hit one eventually? This is Minecraft. We're mining. And we're crafting. Hey, look, a cave. That's what we're looking for. Big old cave. Let's rearrange this bar a little bit just in case. We're going to throw this over here, this over here, this there. That'll do. I don't like that zombie. You're right, Hattie. I should have had faith. Speaking of faith, have y'all heard about the rapture that was supposed to happen yesterday? Another rapture. I feel bad for those people. And like, I get it. I get the want for, something to happen. So for those of you who don't know, what the rapture is, it's supposed to be when Jesus comes back. And he takes all the good boys and girls, takes them up to heaven. And it's always usually some sort of scam or some religious leader who comes out saying it's going to happen soon. People have sold like their cars and stuff And they do this every single time where they're just like, yeah. Well, and it's interesting to listen to people talk about it because they've done like their own quote unquote research. One guy fasted for 3 days and he was like, and God told me that that this was correct. I'm like, you only didn't eat for 3 days, bud. I have friends who spend longer than that on a regular basis not eating. That doesn't make you some sort of religious thing. No, stretch and hydrate. 1 second. Hi, Nikio. How you doing? I'm not wearing a jacket. No, actually, not wearing a shirt either. Y'all do understand that I roll out of bed and start stream, right? We're not going to talk about what I'm wearing right now, chat. I mean, how do you all think I sleep? I do have boxers on. I do have boxers on. And a blanket. Well, I just woke up. I'm not gonna go wake up, put on clothes, take off clothes to shower. I shower every morning. I do a lukewarm shower during the morning. Cold condition my hair. And then twice a week I wash my hair. If even. I'm one of what people? People who care about their hair? Yeah. Hot water does not touch my scalp. No, because streaming gets really warm. You're not allowed to have my hair. Pants are evil also. Yeah, actually, no, pants are just evil. Pants were made by the devil to hide away in God's grace. Because hot water on hair can cause it to damage, especially on curly hair. And I have very, very curly hair. You know, I should start wearing more skirts, I guess. You shouldn't do too hot of water on curly hair. Just extend longevity. How'd you hit me twice before I could hit you once? Where the fuck did you come from? Yeah, you can do full hot, but I would not suggest putting that to your scalp. Heat on your scalp can cause a reduction in hair production. Especially if you do any dyeing of your hair or conditioning it. It's more because it's on your scalp. If you do just the hair, it'll be okay, but good morning, Kinky Man. You wish you were short? Wow, I'm so confused. Now remember, your hair's dead. It's just a collection of dead cells. But being tall is cool. Be tall. I mean, you're short to me, Addie. But who isn't? How you doing, Kinky? Hope you're having a lovely, lovely day. I will say, though, women's clothes are just cut badly. They're trying to make too universal, and women are most definitely not universal. Monster spawner. Monster spawner. Right next to water. What are the chances? This was made to be Monster Grinder. Chat, welcome to Grinder. And we have a name tag. That means we can finally get a pet. How far out does this need to be? I want to make sure it's a square. Zombie spawner. Hello, Big Belly. How you doing? Welcome, welcome. I know, right? Oh, it's perfect. Well, don't rip your blanket. Ooh, I would love that. Carmia. Nothing. Don't worry about it. Now dress who you dressing up for. Myself. Hey, yo. No, it's just scraps. Don't worry, it's not a new shirt. Pants suck. Pants are genuinely the worst. Nothing, just a shirt. Professional griefer. And rippies. I might eventually make this to where the home base is. Yeah, everybody should just walk around naked. Agreed. That might be fun, actually. What if I were to make this like an overgrown home? I mean, maybe not where you're at. I've seen plenty of people walk around in just sports bras. Why? What do you mean you're only alive because of your pants? Explain. Where's home? Chad, I've lost home. Four blocks to science. Okay. No reason got me. I did not almost die. I did not almost walk into my death. Oh, that's fair. That's fair, dwarf. Damn. Oh, there's home. Not a puppy. What do you gotta ask, Venus? What's up, sweetie? Mm-hmm. There it is. I'm waiting, Venus. What you got for me? Mm-hmm. Moving to London. Oh, I hope you have fun with that. Moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches. Moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches. Peaches come from a can, they were built there by a man in a factory downtown. If I had my little way, I'd eat peaches every day. Sun soaking in the shade. I can just hear the gears whirring in Venus's brain trying to figure out what they're wanting to say. Come on, Venus, you can do it. I believe in you. You got this. Oh, okay. Martha, sweetie, you're fine. Don't you worry. Ain't nobody here judging you. Mm-hmm. No. Come on, Venus, you can do it. I'm so intrigued now. You gotta tell me what it is you're thinking. Come on, girlie. You got this. Me too, me too. If it comes out with something, she's like, why you tall? I'm gonna be so upset. I'm gonna be so upset, Venus. Don't disappoint me like that. Better not be why I'm not tall. Girl, I don't know. God just likes me better, I guess. There we go. You mean what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? Now, caro mia, how nerdy do you want me to be right now? Because I can give you two answers. One that you expect and one that is actually correct. Because if I give you the answer you're expecting, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything? The answer is 42. But that is because two things. First off, they asked a too generalized question that cannot be really summarized into one thing, but also deep thought was built wrong. And it is brought up in the series that the original, not deep thought, but the original big thinker was made incorrectly. And that is why the answer of being 42 was actually wrong during the entire series. Mm. Oh, hello, 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 Sheen. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How you doing? I kind of want to read it again. God, I love the book so much. Allison, the voice play. Hello, hello, everybody. This is Hoshi. Can we get a shout out for the lovely Hoshi? Hi, Toho. Welcome, Raiders. Welcome, Raiders. Maybe we'll start doing that for book night. I don't know if we've had a shout out yet, but just in case, let's do one real quick. How was your stream, Hoshi? If you haven't checked out Hoshi, please go check them out. They're very lovely. They're very incredible. They are such a cozy vibe streamer, and I just love going to their streams. But I don't know, people. What were you all up to? Did your stream go well? Oh, Karamiya, you can do / and the word shout out, and then put in the streamer's name. I'll make a list of quick commands for people. Ashi, you do not need to say a single thing. You are a wonderful, fantastic human being, and if coming here gives you even the slightest respect, I'm happy I can be here to helpfully brighten your mood a little bit. And thank you so much for the raid, genuinely. We're working on making a monster spawner, chat. A monster grinder, I suppose is the right word for it. If you take my... He's looking at me. They get angry when you look at them. Okay, if you want to send me the question later, that's fine too. Those things get angry when you look at them. And, they can pick up blocks. And so I was terrified he's going to come in and take the spawner, which would have been hilarious. But also the most infuriating thing in the entire world. Good morning, Ali. 1, 2, 3, 4. Would you all be interested in a Q&A stream? I could make it a drunken Q&A stream. What if we do this? I will answer any question. If there's ever a question I feel like I can't answer, I'll drink. Although that would be amusing. Yes, Carmia. Come on, let me hear it. Let me hear that protectiveness. I don't think you understand how much it takes to get me, like, actually non-sober. Oh, that's the thing. I want people to ask funny questions. And if it does come to a point like where I am, at risk at harming my health at all, I will 100% just stop stream because, I care about myself. It might not seem it, chat, but I do actually genuinely care about myself and my own health. I just tend to do things that are against that. But you can't blame me for that. I'm working on it. I'm working on getting to a place where I'm properly taking care of myself. Every day is a new day of choices. Yeah, I just keep making the wrong ones. What's my favorite alcohol? God, you see, everything for me is tied back to grass block, 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 grass block. Yes. You have to be very careful to not be overdoing it, and surprisingly, chat, you will not get me to the point where I'll overdo it. You cannot do paid for shots is one thing. You cannot do a pay to drink. And you cannot do anything that allows chat to influence the amount you drink. But so my favorite nostalgic alcohols. I like Hefeweizen beer. Say a light wheat German beer is one of my favorites. I like anything that's very sweet, citrusy, or fruity. But really, I just like tasting the most unique things. Favorite liquor. Genuinely, I don't have a favorite. Well, I'm glad you're sober. I mean, so everything has its own unique place. I mean, vodka is going to be the most universal. It has such a mild, just alcoholic taste. You can kind of throw anything into it. Whiskey is good for sipping, and I love a good honey whiskey. I love mead. Mead is so delicious. I've said some really good sour ales. That is unique tasting. I will tell you something though, chat. There's one thing that I hate. That I absolutely hate. IPAs. I don't remember what I was doing now. IPAs are the worst. Are the absolute worst. An IPA, also known as an India Pale Ale, is a beer that was specifically made, I think it was by the India East Trade Company, but it might not have been. It was intended for shipment to India. Now, what they did to this beer was they increased its hops content. Not hops. Yes, something. To make it stronger. So that when it sits on a boat for months to get to India, the flavor will have diluted, but still have a good taste. So they intentionally made this overly strong tasting beer specifically so that, it would stay flavorful. Well, people now make it and drink it straight from its initial distilling process. So it tastes so awful and so bitter. Hate it. Hate it so much. Also, Chad, guess what? I can touch grass now. There we go, touching grass. Oh, the only way that you can really get the dirt bog with grass, as far as I know, is if an Enderman is carrying it, which is what happened here. An Enderman must have picked up a grass block, brought it down here. Carne, I had that thought for like 3 seconds, and I'm like, nobody else is going to think that thought. Nobody else is going to have that thought. That's just a Gene thought. God damn it. Yeah, Silk Touch would also work, I suppose. If you have that Silk Touch enchantment, it should probably let you pick up the grass block. Yeah, so you can enchant your items. We just have never gotten to that point yet. And if you enchant them, you can put some useful things on them. One of the things is Silk Touch. And Silk Touch allows you to pick up a block without like mining its like adjacent material. For instance, if I pick up stone, it becomes cobblestone, right? Well, if I use Silk Touch, it stays the same textured stone. I think so. Thank you for the follow, Grow King. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Alright, Moxie, get some sleep. Eep's good. Eep's nice and good. Minecraft is so cool. Minecraft is just so cool. Like, this is why I play this game, because, like, even with me having done so much in this, there's so much more. And then Redstone, which just gives you this big open slate. It's Legos, chat. It's Legos for autistic kids and adults. I mean, you also don't have to play hardcore, Addy. You can just play normal, and you know that way you can respawn. Yeah, did you know y'all can make trading posts? People do that all the time. What do you mean? Seriously, what? No, nap time. Go get some eeps. Why no eeps? You're kidding me. Addie, sweetie, no. Oh, honey. Oh. Yes, it's called survival. Baby girl, don't. Oh. Oh. Oh, I could sell you a bridge, couldn't I? Yeah, you can also just turn off all the baddies and you don't have to fight anybody. Also, hey Addie, I just wanted to tell you this, but I'm actually a Nigerian prince, and if you send me 3 $1,000, I will send you back $300,000. Promise. True facts. I would never lie. I know you do. No, you do that. And G never streamed ever again. $300K. Oh, and 300,000 would last me a long time. Yeah, if I. Okay, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I were to have like $20,000, maybe even $10,000. Well, no, but it is. There's a. I'm not saying Nigerians are doing the scams, but it's always a Nigerian prince. It's the claim. But yeah, so if I were to have like $10,000 all at once or 20,000, I would probably quit my job and just stream full time. That is all it would take. Because I think I could possibly make it. I think I could figure it out. Oh no, Crucy, I would actually feel too guilty to scam anybody. I'm gonna be honest. I could never scam anybody here. I would feel so guilty. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, well, yeah, it is. Hey y'all, Chad, did you know that secretly I'm a very, very attractive lady, and all you have to do is give me Anyways, before like some Twitch mod comes in and thinks I'm being serious, this is all jokes. All jokes. I'm not actually wanting to scam people. Maybe. Jennifer confirmed. True facts. I definitely would not go by Jennifer, though. That would not be my name if I was a lady. Oh, some guy came in and offered me $2 million while you were gone, Carmia. He said that all I had to do was send him like 2,000 first, and I was like, I don't have much money left for rent, but like I can make it work. And so yeah, now I don't have rent money, but I'm gonna get money back, Carmia, so it's fine. No. let's see. How does this layout work usually? No, yeah, I'm trying to remember what the next part is, because I've cleared out the sides. So I need to now. Wasn't it down? Yeah, God, what's the next after I cleared out 4? I also need to move these chests. Dig down 3 everywhere? Like clear out the entire floor? Good night, Keely. Sleep well. Oh, shoot, chat. Alright, I need to go grab my work computer real quick. And we're going to stream just a little bit longer until work tries to get some attention from me, okay? So let me move all this. I can't believe your friend lied to you. Alright, lovelies, I'll be right back. You behave yourself while I'm gone, okay? Alright, almost there. Who said spider wacko? There we go. Alright. Now I will have my stuff set to available. Chat, if I do get a call, that's when stream's gonna end. I'm back. I echo. Enjoy work? Alright, let's dig down 3. Ugh, 1, 2, 3. What were you doing while I was gone? Y'all, should I have been worried? Like around in a circle? Hmm. Hmm. Like a circle. Yeah, I'm gonna make a water circle. I'm gonna make a circle. No, they don't have circles in Minecraft. Oh my god, Addy, please. Please, honey. What do you mean, no? You said fill the walls with water. You told me to fill the walls with water. What do you mean, no? Uh-oh. Oh, well, I mean, fine, jeez. I could have sworn you said water. I could have sworn you said water. We're building a zombie grinder. XP. XP and items. You make grinders for things because they will, Oh no, they can drop iron. They can drop flour. They can drop a bunch of random things. But mostly it's the experience points. And sometimes they'll drop enchanted bits of armor. But experience points are used for enchanting. Enjoy your Z's, Venus. I refuse to stay hydrated just because you said that. Thank you for the follow. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. Enchanting is very good. Enchanting is very good. You'll make your armor stronger. And that's why, if you ever notice, I always grab bamboo and sugarcane when I can, because sugarcane's what makes the pages. Unfortunately, I have no leather, but that's going to be interesting. Probably. No. You need a book. You need obsidian, you need a diamond, you need a carpet. And that'll make you a crafting table, not crafting table, an enchanting table. And then you need bookshelves to increase the enchantment strength. I don't know how I'm gonna get a cow, but I need to figure that one out. Maybe I can go close to the surface and see. You do need carpet. No, we'll look at it. I looked up the recipe the other day. We'll see. We'll see. Anyways, what's next? I can't build it yet, anyways. Enjoy getting ready for work. Is it bucket time? Is it bucket time? This will take a while. I usually do Mondays for talking about stuff and Fridays for teaching stuff. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing that. We'll see. We'll see. I do plans on making a ASMR Basics D&D video, though. I didn't look that one up. I looked up the recipe on the Minecraft forum. On the Minecraft wiki. Except now it shows obsidian. I could have sworn I looked at this the other day and it was carpet. Oh, that's fine. We'll see. I'll probably start over. Oh, okay, maybe that's what I'm remembering. This is gonna take so long. Oh, yeah, no, you just need 2 source blocks. 4 just looks nicer. You didn't say on the ground. Carmi. Mia's fed up with my ass. Mia is so fed up with me. Economy has definitely been doing something. They said, okay, Gene, do this, and then looked away, and then come back, and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? I love you, sweetie. You know, I appreciate you so very, very much. I know you're busy. I appreciate you helping. This will make this a lot easier. I mean, technically it still would have worked if I did it up there, but... What does that mean? What do you mean I'm total free? No, technically I'm working right now. But I figured I'd go just a little bit longer. Since Hoshi came in... Oh, so... Have I explained to you all how I work? So, I work IT, and in the mornings, I work remotely for about 2 hours or an hour and a half from home. So during that hour and a half when I'm working remotely, oftentimes I'll just be kind of focusing to see if any calls come in, because there's only like 1 or 2 techs on board in the morning. And so during that time, sometimes I'll let the stream go a little bit longer. It is significantly easier, Kamiya. To beat the game while being completely underground. Wait, was it only supposed to be the corners? I think it was only supposed to be the corners. Yes. You did say put water all around the edge, in fact. There you go. Easy fix. Oh no, there is a place called the End. And the End is where there's a giant dragon that you have to fight. Oh no, those are the Eyes of Ender. The Eyes of Ender you have to kill Endermen for. Or technically, yeah, the Ender Pearls. You kill Endermen for them. Okay, you know what? I need to do this real quick, chat. Well, if you want to beat the game, you have to kill them. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, which way was it? Damn. Kamiya, I like that you put teleport as one of the reasons. Like, you know, them being tall and skinny, that was not enough. But the fact that they can teleport, that's what makes them attractive. Who doesn't want to teleport? True enough, true facts. And some of them are. Interesting. Okay, now we are. Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. Now to make sure nothing spawns down here. Mm-hmm. And what do you mean clear out a bit more space? Say more than clear out more space. What does this mean? Oh. No, I don't have a chest yet. So wait, so they'll land. Oh, is this supposed to kill them instantly? Okay. Mm-hmm. Will be a while till I get enough wood for that. So for now, we're gonna do doop 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 doop. Yeah. Hoppa. Mm-hmm. There we go. You have the chest to the side. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I can make what I need. Mm-hmm. That should work. Okay. I didn't expect them to spawn instantly. There we go. Oh, well, the point is that you get the experience points. If they die instantly, you don't get experience. You have to kill them. The point is to put them all into a space so you can grind them up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there we go. All right. Well, that'll be the end of today. We have a little zombie grinder. I might actually build out this entire place into like a lovely overgrown area. But we shall see. No guarantees. Oh my god, chance villager. Wait a second. I don't have a boat. I don't have enough wood to make a boat. Shoot. Not much. We're about to capture a zombie villager. Damn, okay, give me a second. So hard. Yes, you can save them. How do you apply the name tag? Do I have to actually have a name on it? I never. Shoot, okay. I should have enough. Oh, there's chat. Good chat. Chat, we're just gonna keep you in here, it's fine. Oh, I can't believe we found a villager zombie. Because, chat, there's no other way for us really to get villagers right now instead of getting lucky. Amazing. Alright, well, that's going to be it for today. See if we can raid out. Those are titties. Okay, we'll not go there. Of course, of course. Give me a second, chat. Let me see if I can find somebody for us to raid into. Give me like 5 seconds, chat. Should we just raid into shrimps? There's me. Hello, me. Now we'll raid shrimps. We'll raid shrimps. Raid shrimps. Alright. There's the raid message. Nice shrimps. Alright, chat. You'll have a good one. I will see you all next time. It's been very, very lovely. I appreciate you all so very, very much. And for now, mwah.